All right, let's get started working on your generic nose. I have all of my drawing pencils, my blender and an eraser, and then I have the reference pictures available. So the reference pictures, you can choose any of the noses. I'm going to draw this one for the example. When we're getting ready to start drawing a nose, we need to remember that most of the nose is not drawn with lines, but instead is drawn with value. So what we see right here, I have outlined in black the areas that I will actually use a line for, and then the rest of it is going to be just value, either applying value or erasing the value in order to create the nose. So let's go ahead and get started here. When I'm beginning, remember we're going to be doing our proportional relationships to make sure that the nose is the right size and goes in the right area. So I will start by drawing the side of the one nostril over to the left, and then in about the same area over here, just kind of across the way, I'm going to draw in another nostril over to the right. So those are the nose sides. After that, I'm going to look and see where the septum comes down, and if you see in my little reference picture, the septum in this nose is a little bit lower than the sides of the nostrils. So that's what I will reflect in my drawing. So I go about to the middle, and I put it down like this, and I try for the middle. We need to make sure that whatever nose you're drawing, you are filling up this space with your drawing. So we'll draw a little curve around to the nostril side, and a little curve around to this nostril side, and then the nostril opening comes up, and then it goes down and kind of connects to the septum. Different ones do different things, but that's what this one does. If I look over at my example, I can see that the other nostril is in about the same place over here. And then we're just going to leave the rest of it open. So here we have this shape with just the nostril openings and then the side of the nostrils. And then just like I said before, we're going to be using value to create the rest of the nose. Now with this nose, there is a shape of the bit of the nose that is sticking out, and it's shaped kind of like this, right? So it looks almost like a little diamond or a kite shape. And that's the area that's poking forward, so I want to make sure that I am keeping it pretty light there. I do have some value that is on the side of this nose. I want to make sure that I use my pencil to create the value, that I'm not drawing a line for the side of the nose, because when we draw lines for the side of the nose, it flattens them out and prevents them from looking realistically like the noses that we have. So go like this, and I'm just using a basic modeled value technique where I lay down overlapping ovals to try to fill in the space, and I know that I can lighten up with my eraser, and I'll go darker with the other pencils, but for right now I'm just adding it in using the 2H. Not pushing hard, definitely using the sides so that it doesn't make grooves. So we're just going to start out just like this with this basic kind of layer. Again, leaving the middle area lighter, right? So this is just light. Now we're going to go into it with the blending stump. I'm going to use the side of my blending stump because I want it to be smooth. And so I'm barely touching it, barely. And just kind of going over it. I'm going to be bringing the value kind of more into the middle so that I can get those very light values. And I'm using a circular motion with the side of the blending stump. You don't want to lean it up and use the tip of the blending stump because that will give you lines and we're trying to remove the lines that we've been creating with the pencil. And so what good does it do to make more lines with the blending stump? It really, really doesn't. So here we go. I'm getting it all nicely blended throughout here. Okay, and so now you can see as we're going, I've got the shape kind of done, and then I have the lightness preserved, and I've gone over some of my lines, which is really okay. They were just there for structure so that I would know where to put value and details. And so we're just gonna go like that. All right, cool. Now it's time to get the 2B pencil. And with my 2B pencil, I'm going to start doing some more of the darker tones. And I'll go in here, oops, with the 2B pencil. And this is where the nostril is real dark. So I'm going to make a little line. And then now I'm going to add value to it, so that it goes up to the line, making the line disappear. So I don't have an outline, but I just had an edge to the very dark value. And then I'm just making a neat tone. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on this. And I'm going to do the same thing over here for the edge of this nostril. And I'm just checking with my reference picture to make sure the shape that I am making this nostril is accurate to his face. And now I'm going to add in some value, remembering to layer my value, lay the value down neatly, and do my best to hide the stroke lines when I start putting the value down. Can't really leave hiding the stroke lines until the last. You need to make sure that you're putting them down in a very neat way. Getting it situated like this, blending it in. Okay, just like that. Now I'm going to go over it and add the value on the sides of the nose. So I'm looking for any places that it's dark. I'm going to make it darker. And if it needs to be lighter than what I've done, I will use my eraser to lighten it up. So we're going to get this drawn in. And I'm just following the path that's there. Right, so it's moving along pretty nicely here. I'm just checking with my reference picture. Looks like this shadow goes all the way to the other shadow. And then using some very light pressure to get the lighter tone, this shadow comes across the front, leaving a small gap. Just kind of trying to tone it in over here. Neatening and smoothing. Let's get a little bit of the darker tone on this side. You have to have lights and darks all over in order to make it look dimensional. Right, there we go. just like that. All right, so now we have a value that is, similar in darkness, but it's not quite as nice and tidy as it needs to be. So if you want to, you can head into here with the blender and gently touching, just barely rubbing it over the paper. You can use it to smooth your value. Right, just like this. Right, so we're just going to kind of go over here. And come and bring it in down here. Now, I'm not going to rub this dark tone too much over this part because it's a really light tone over there and I don't want it to get extra dark, and so if I bring the 2B out, it will make it dark, but if I can just use it to fill in some of the lightness, you can just use it. Right, like use the blender almost to draw in different light values. So I'm just gently going over with the blender. Remember, you have to maintain the same drawing that you did when you did the outside and you added the value. You're doing kind of the same thing when you're with the blender. You have to make sure that you're going over it in the same direction. Okay, so now we have a pretty decent little nose, but he's not quite done yet. He doesn't have dark darks, and our last step is usually to go over it with a pencil again. So right into our nose cavity, into the nostril, you want to take your 6B, super sharp and pointy, and let's get in there because it's recessed, right? Your nose cavity goes inside and up, and so we need to make sure that it looks really dark in there. And then also on this side of his nose is very dark. So we'll go in and work on that. All right, with our 6B situation over here. And then I'm going to get 6B up in this nostril as well. A little more pressure than I've been using, and let's get a little tiny 6B value over there, right? And then now I'm going to go in with the 2B again and adjust the value in here because as I blended it, it made it a little bit too light, and so you need to make sure you're going back over it again to adjust it. And if it made it a little too dark, you can always go into it with an eraser. If you've made it too light, you can go over it with a pencil. So you have to just be honest with yourself and critical looking at it and seeing what it's done. Okay, just like that. Now I do have this kind of glowing effect going on, and I will take care of that with my 2H pencil in just a minute, because it doesn't actually appear to be glowing, and a glowing nose is sort of weird. All right, so I've got my tones down. Now I'm going to go back in with that 2H just like promised and tone it. Now I could use the blender to do this same thing, but I don't want to because my pencil is more precise. And I like it to have a little bit of the graphite texture. I don't like it to be all just kind of schlumpa. I like the pencil texture on it, so you choose what you like. We're going to do a little bit more blending with the blender though. Okay, so that's about it for this. Again, your most important idea is not to draw the nostrils connecting, to make sure that you go 2H, 2B, 2H, blend, 2B, blend, 6B, blend, go back with 2H and 2B, and readjust, making sure that you're blending very, very lightly and gently. Make sure you draw your nose pretty large so that it fills up the space in here. So let's take a look at this side by side. So if this is my self-portrait, I'm probably working a little more on it for the shape, right? To get the shape of the inner part of the nose a little bit closer. So I would take this guy. I'm gonna dab and drag a little. Kind of adjust, and it's not perfect, but it looks pretty darn good.